Simulcast, I like this. Periscope for you and podcast for us. For those of you aware or unaware, this is Children's Pedcast. It's a conversation about pediatrics with children's hospitals and clinics of Minnesota. My name is Jimmy Bellamy. I'm partially obstructed for everyone watching on camera by the microphone, but that's okay. No one needs to see me. It's not a must. But we're here to talk today about food allergies. It's an important topic. It's one of the most important topics we've discussed in the show's infancy here. We've done 6 episodes, and this will be episode 7. People will be able to, we're recording on a Monday afternoon. People will be able to download it starting Monday night today, so you won't have that much time between the time it downloads on iTunes or Podbean or Stitcher from when we are recording. So Missy Berggren, tell people who you are. We've I guess to give people a background, if you read the Children's Mighty blog, which is at childrensmn.org, Missy has contributed pieces to that about food allergies and family. And just give everybody, I've read your bio. There's so much. It's almost better if you read it. That's my out. I'm passing the buck on to you.
Nice. Well, thanks, Jimmy, and thanks for including me in this. So first and foremost, I'm a mom with a child who has severe food allergies, and so that's what we're talking about today, and that's the most important thing right now. The way that I first started getting involved in this life is when she was diagnosed at age 1, and so from then until now, she's 7.5. I've spent a lot of my time researching, reading, even getting to the point of mentoring other people and speaking on the topic of food allergies. So I'm not a medical professional. I'm not a doctor or a nurse. I'm just a mom who has done a lot of homework, and I like to think of myself as an advocate. During my day job, I happen to be in marketing and PR and a little dose of social media in there. And I like to blog and tweet and Facebook. And so I write about food allergies in those places as well.
Our audience is mainly made up of parents, so I know that they appreciate having a parental perspective on this topic. There's so many questions I have. I hear about food allergies all the time, whether it's in media, in my actual life, or just around what we do at Children's. And my biggest question I hear from people is this something new? People say, I don't remember when I was a kid hearing about food allergies.
Right. So the answer to, is this something new? No, but it's something that's become much more prevalent in today's society. So when I was a kid, I didn't know anyone who had food allergies. Now today, there's 1 in every 13 kids in America has food allergies. So that's like 2 kids in every classroom, if you think about it from a nationwide perspective, which is pretty huge. The theories on why there are so many food allergies today are pretty varied, and nobody is willing to put their finger on one thing to say that's the cause. But it goes across all sorts of theories, from the hygiene hypothesis that parents are trying to keep their houses too clean with hand sanitizers and certain kinds of soaps, all the way to how we grow our foods, what are GMOs, is that impacting, scientifically modifying the food, is that affecting how our bodies absorb it? So lots of different theories, but at the end of the day, it's certainly on the rise and causing a lot of problems for people today.
When I was in school, whether it was elementary through high school, even college, I remember little to no precautions being taken as far as what my diet consisted of, or other kids in school, what was approved to bring in. Mm-hmm. I will say they frowned upon homemade treats. If you had birthdays, it had to be store-bought, which was fine because I didn't want people to pester me. My mom is a great baker and cook, and I didn't want to constantly have to bring in food because it was so good. So that saved me a lot of problems. What kinds of precautions are taken now in schools, and does it vary by district? Does it vary by school?
Sure. So it does vary everywhere you go, all the way down to the classroom level. Some teachers are more accommodating than others. Some districts are more accommodating than others. Usually you're going to see the most restrictive policies in the elementary school setting or the preschool setting, because those kids don't have as strong of awareness of safety, and the little ones with food allergies aren't as able to advocate for themselves or make wise decisions. So by the time you get to a middle school level or a high school level, most of that stuff is gone. But for the little kids, you'll see anything from a peanut-free or tree-nut-free classroom all the way to a peanut-free school, or rules about what kinds of snacks are safe to bring into the classroom. In our situation, what I've set up for my child with food allergies is that her classroom is free of all of her allergens. So she's allergic to a handful of things: peanuts, tree nuts, milk, eggs, and shellfish. And so our rules are that nobody brings those foods into the classroom. They can bring it to the lunchroom, but not to the classroom.
What are things that you've done in advance? I can imagine now your daughter's 7.5. Mm-hmm. You probably have it down to a science. What do you do ahead of each school year? Is it notifying the teachers in that grade? Mm-hmm. And pardon my ignorance, I don't have kids. So I know when I was in elementary school, we had one classroom, and then we'd go somewhere else for science, somewhere else for math, somewhere else for computers. Are they still in one class, or are they doing classes by the hour like you did in middle school and high school?
Right. So I think every school is probably different. My daughter spends most of her time in the main classroom, but then they do go to art, music, Spanish in different classrooms, gym class. So for her, one of the things that we have to keep in mind with food allergies is how to identify if a reaction is happening, but also how to treat it. And so this is when you start getting into the topic of emergency medications and where do you have them in the school or with the child. So that's also a broad spectrum of how much schools are willing to work with you, what your doctor recommends, et cetera. So for us and our family, we tend to be on the very conservative side of things, which means we acknowledge this is a life-threatening illness and something bad could happen, so we're going to take every precaution we can. So my daughter actually self-carries her EpiBelt, which means she wears it on her body. It's a little spy belt like you would see at the sporting goods stores. Mm-hmm. And she carries 2 EpiPens and a dose of Benadryl in there, along with her allergy action plan, which outlines like what to look for and what to do. So she keeps that on her body all the time at school and takes that with her every class she goes to.
I can imagine that. I think about growing up with 4 boys in my family, my mom and dad, God bless them. I can imagine, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but the general worry that parents have for their children must be tenfold when you have your daughter out the door and you're not with her. Do you have a heightened concern, or do you feel that you might have more of a concern than, and that's not saying you care for your daughter more than other people care for their kids, but it seems like a daily battle.
So I won't lie and say it's easy, but it has gotten easier. So the very first day of daycare or preschool or kindergarten were all really challenging for me as the mom to let go and trust that everything's going to be okay. The longer we go and the more educated my daughter is and her support system of teachers and friends, the more comfortable I feel. So back to your question before about every school year, what do we do to answer that? Every school year, before the school year starts, we have a food allergy meeting with all of her teachers, the office staff, the nurse, the district nurse, the principal, everybody who will be in touch with her throughout the school year. And we go through what are the foods she's allergic to? What is anaphylaxis, the severe reaction that can happen? What are the symptoms they should look for? And I actually show them pictures of here's what she looks like when she broke out in hives one time. Here's an EpiPen. Let's practice it so you guys can all get comfortable with it. And then what do you do in that emergency? When you use the EpiPen, what comes next? And so I try to have an open dialogue where they can all ask questions. We have special things set up in each classroom. Like in computer class, there's a bunch of kids that all use the same computers. So we have some Lysol wipes in the computer room that my daughter is responsible for walking over to it, getting a wipe, and cleaning off her keyboard and her mouse before class starts. And that's what we've done since kindergarten, and it's worked really well. So what other classrooms need special accommodations like that? And we talk through those things.
What from your point of view, what is the public's perspective on it or understanding? I think in the past 2 decades, it's become second nature now that restaurants freely understand, and I'm sure some still have work to do, but they say, okay, here's what we're doing. We don't use peanut oil here when we cook, or we're taking the steps to make sure that food allergies are being addressed, or they'll designate what entrees are, I guess, peanut friendly or food allergy friendly, because let's remember it's more than just peanuts. There's plenty of foods, and we'll get into that as well.
Sure.
Has the public's understanding of it improved significantly in the past handful of years, or what steps do you think still need to be made in general?
Sure.
And that's a kind of a wide open question, so I apologize in advance.
No, that's okay. I would say that the more we talk about it, the more people learn. And unfortunately, the more severe fatalities that happen, the more people are kind of shocked into reality that that can happen. There have been a number of cases in the last year or two of little kids to teenagers dying, and of course adults as well, of food allergies. There's one here in Minnesota up north recently that came out of a young man who ate pancakes at a hometown cafe, and they asked if there was milk in it, and they said no, and the boy ate the pancakes. If they did have milk in it, he suffered from anaphylaxis and ended up dying. So when restaurants hear stories like that, my experience is one of two things happen. Either they get completely defensive and they don't want to help people with food allergies at all because they don't want to be responsible for your death or severe complications, or they become educated and empowered to figure out how they can accommodate it. And I've seen restaurants on both sides of that spectrum. The ones that are defensive and worried, I get away from them as fast as I can. The ones that are willing to work with us, I'm really happy to work with them as well.
There's so many ways to do this as far as this next question that you answer. And as you said up top, this is one parent's perspective.
Right.
How, as a parent, would you say it's best to recommend, maybe best isn't the word, but how would you introduce foods to your child for the first time? I would think, again, I'll use peanuts as the example. I love peanut butter. And as a kid, I think I ate it almost every day. Mm-hmm. What would you do in order to introduce that to make sure that in the event there was something, would you make sure you're within X amount of feet of a medical facility? How would you do that?
So I'm definitely not a doctor, and I'm probably not qualified to answer this question. But I'll tell you that when I was teaching my children how to eat new foods, I always heard the advice, give them one food at a time and wait a couple days in case they have a reaction, you know what it's from. Yeah. Okay. Well, what I didn't know is what would a reaction look like and what should I do if that happens? Okay. So that's the part that they left out. I also remember hearing that around things like peas and strawberries and, all the fruits and veggies kids are eating, not about what are the things kids are most allergic to. And so this is a good time to pause and share that there are 8 foods that 90% of Americans are allergic to. And it's different in China and it's different in other countries. So in America, the top 8 foods that people are allergic to are milk, eggs, peanuts, tree nuts, which are all other nuts like almonds, cashews, etc., fish, shellfish, wheat, and soy. Okay, so if 90% of Americans are allergic to those 8 foods, those are the ones that you want to be watching for when you're feeding your kid the first time, on high alert compared to just maybe low to normal alert for all the other foods. So I didn't know this. And so when I gave my daughter eggs for the very first time, she had a very severe reaction. I had no idea about food allergies. I didn't know what to look for. All I knew was that she started acting very weird. In this particular case, her eyeballs turned red. She started getting red streaking down her face and her neck. It didn't look like hives or mosquito bites. It was like red, puffy streaking. She was very emotionally distraught and like clawing at her face. She started coughing, and the red streaking went all the way down her torso. I had no idea what was going on. I thought maybe this is eczema. Maybe this is I don't know what's happening. And so my first instinct was put her in the bathtub and wash something off of her because I thought maybe there was something on her skin. And then I had some Aveeno oatmeal bath and I poured that in there because that's supposed to soothe your skin when you're itchy. And I called the doctor's office, right? So I did something right. I called the doctor and I said, this is what's happening. I don't know what to do. And they said, well, we think she's having an allergic reaction. You have 2 options. You can call 911, or if you don't think it's that bad, you can just drive her into the office and we'll help you figure out what's going on. So this was a really traumatic moment for my family. I made the decision to bring her to the doctor. And my husband at the time was home with my other son, and I took her by myself. My daughter was so worked up from crying that she ended up passing out asleep in the back seat. But you can imagine my thoughts. Is she breathing back there? What's happening now? I don't know what to do. So in hindsight, I should have called 911 because they would have gotten to her sooner and they would have gotten her to the hospital sooner without me carrying all of that responsibility. She ended up being okay. The doctor's office gave her some medication and gave me a prescription for an EpiPen. They also signed us up for food allergy testing. So that was my first severe allergic reaction that we went through. So my advice to other parents would be know what the signs and symptoms are. You're learning some of them today. Know what those top 8 foods are to be on the lookout for, and ask your doctor when it's appropriate to give those foods. So in a family where you already have food allergies, they're going to give you a different piece of advice on when to give peanuts versus a family with no history of allergies.
You mentioned off the top that you think of yourself as an advocate. I see you as that. Is that a responsibility you feel that it's important to carry because you are a parent of a child with a food allergy, and that you have, I think about parents who don't have kids with food allergies, they also can be impacted by this because your kids have friends over.
Right.
It's important to know in the event that you encounter this, or at least be prepared as a way to prevent, a possible tragedy. What do you feel like the work you're doing has done for those parents who maybe aren't touched by it every day, but I can imagine have learned something and prevented things from even escalating to a level that could be harmful to a kid?
Sure. So my responsibility and the way I view my life is I have a responsibility to care and protect for my family, and I have a responsibility to help other people when and where I can. So to protect my family means empowering my daughter, keeping her safe, making sure I know what I'm doing when it comes to food allergies, and then empowering her teachers and classmates to help keep her safe as well, and to kind of destigmatize food allergies and help her to feel as normal and just a part of things as everybody else. So that's part A. Part B, helping other people, is how do I take what I know and help the new mom who's crying because her daughter just ate eggs for the first time and had the same thing happen? And how can I make it easier on her to give her the information that I didn't have when I was in her shoes? So that's where having the blog that I have came in handy, right? Because I had this blog way before my daughter had food allergies. And I talked about parenting and going back to work and breastfeeding and other kind of parenting topics. And when Avery was diagnosed with food allergies, I started to incorporate some of the food allergy information. And what I've always found with blogging is people prefer to get tips and resources way more than just reading your journal about, we went to the park today and here's some cute pictures. Like, they are searching Google for food allergy information and they're finding my website. And so that is a really easy way for me to help people. The other thing that I do is we have a local group called the Food Allergy Support Group of Minnesota. And so I'm after being a recipient of their services for a couple years, going to the meetings and different events, I then volunteered to be on the board of directors. And so now I help plan all of those things and fundraisers. And so part of our group's mission is to support families in Minnesota and to give them education and resources.
And your blog is marketingmama.com, correct?
Yes,
People
yeah.
can find you there. And you're at Twitter, at marketingmama, and that's M-A-M-A. I know there's multiple ways to spell mama. Don't want to confuse anybody.
Yep.
When it comes to the food allergy group, what kinds of things, I know annually you have an event, talk about what people, and I know we have listeners from all over, but if you're in the Twin Cities metro area or in Minnesota, there are ways for you to get information here, but then talk about this fair. And then what would you recommend people in other places, whether it be, I know, let's start small. Let's go in the United States can do, but then maybe even internationally. I know it is all different. You said even the top 8 foods are different per country.
So the resource fair that you're mentioning is an annual event that we have every fall. Usually it's at the Hopkins Community Center off of Highway 7, and we invite different companies who sell foods or products directly related to food allergies to be there and share information about what they sell. So it might be a top food allergy friendly food company like Enjoy Life, which makes top 8 allergen free foods, which we're big fans of in my family. Or it could be a family selling belts that you can wear to put your EpiPens in, or lots of other types of things of that nature. We also have an allergist, Ask the Allergist booth. And this fall, we're going to have, in addition to that, an Ask the Pharmacist booth, because medications is an important topic for us. One thing that we did last year that made it so amazing that we're going to do again is we turned it into a Halloween event. And so in addition to all those cool things, kids were encouraged to come in costume. And Halloween is kind of tricky for kids with food allergies, because imagine all the Reese's peanut butter cups and Snickers get handed out door to door. So what we provided was a safe place for these kids to trick or treat and go around from table to table where these businesses are and get candy that was top 8 free. So it was pretty cool for them. We had a huge turnout this last year of kids in costume, and we're definitely going to do that piece again too. So the parents get educated and the kids have a lot of fun, and it's a great time.
I got a chance to talk to you in December. You came into the office, and Julia Sieper joined you as well. Yeah. She's from the food allergy support group of Minnesota. I think I asked you this question then, and it's a question others may have, is do you think that the term itself, food allergies, sometimes downplays the severity? Because I know as a person, in my head, when I heard the word allergies, I think about scratchy throat, runny nose. Does that hurt in the sense that people may not understand just how severe food allergies can be?
It could. You'll hear some people talk about anaphylaxis, and they'll use that term instead of food allergies. So food allergies is, it's an allergy. It's something I'm allergic to. It's a food, where anaphylaxis is the actual crisis body response to that food. And so an anaphylaxis response is usually something that requires 911 and go to the hospital. Not all food allergy reactions get that extreme, but many of them do, and that's when they're life-threatening. So there is, I see a lot of confusion between what is a food intolerance versus a food allergy. Some people who say they're lactose intolerant, or let's say, I know somebody who told me once that they're allergic to pizza because every time they have pizza, they break out with pimples. A little bit different than what I consider to be a traditional food allergy. A traditional food allergy, or in the purest sense of the word, it impacts your immune system, not just I have side effects from it. So your immune system kicks in and it starts to attack the food because it views it as poison. And so then you can have a host of different things that happen, including your throat swelling up, hives, eyes, etc., anaphylaxis.
How important is it, and I was just thinking about this when you had mentioned you have top 8 free foods at home. What kinds of lifestyle changes have you made? Because you don't have any food allergies.
Right.
So what kind of changes have you made to your lifestyle? And do you recommend that it's probably best to keep the home free of that for all residents?
Yeah, that's a tough question, because every family is different. Every child with food allergies or adult with food allergies has a different situation, and then every response to it is different. There are actually new tests that can show if a peanut allergy is severe enough that you would have anaphylaxis and potentially life-threatening, versus what you might consider to be a mild reaction that would not be life-threatening. So there are some families that, armed with that information, might decide to allow peanut products in their house. Now, my daughter had that test. It's called the peanut component test. And it showed us that she would have a life-threatening anaphylaxis reaction. And so I have a peanut-free house. And as I mentioned before, I'm on the conservative end. So we take it incredibly seriously and don't allow room for error or risk as much as possible. So our home is free of peanuts, tree nuts, shellfish, and the one that we do keep there is milk, because my son and I both drink milk, and calcium's important, and it's not as severe of an allergy for her, but it is tricky. And I do know people who have peanut allergies that they still have family members making peanut butter sandwiches, and they try to be as careful as they can. So I don't want to judge those families. Everyone has a different comfort level with what they do.
Now, Avery's your daughter.
Yes.
Is she the oldest or is she the youngest?
She's the youngest.
Okay, so then did you go back and test your son for anything when she started to develop?
Interestingly,
allergies?
not, because usually if someone has a food allergy, you're going to know it when they eat the food.
True.
Unlike some other things that might be more hidden, like celiac, which is a totally different type of food issue that someone might have that may not be obvious unless you get tested for it. So with the food allergy, I've since learned that there's other people in my family line that have food allergies, but with my son, he had never shown any signs. So I just make sure he continues to eat those things when he's away from the house so that he doesn't end up developing an allergy by not eating it.
So we had talked up top about some of the theories about why they seem to be more prevalent than in the past, but are there any genetic links as far as will your daughter likely pass that on, or where did it come from? Where did her allergy come from as far as genetically? Are there ties?
Yeah, so there are. An allergic syndrome is genetically passed on to heirs, and I grew up with childhood asthma, which is considered an allergic syndrome, as well as severe pet allergies to cats and pollen allergies. And so I always grew up, still to this day, I take a Claritin or a Zyrtec every day all through the year just to kind of stay on top of it. My dad had a lot of allergies. My brother has an allergy. Nobody had food allergies that I knew of. But what I've learned is that if either one of the parents has an allergic syndrome, which could be the allergies, asthma, or even eczema can count, your chances of a child having those is 50%. And it could be any allergic syndrome. So both of my kids had the potential to get allergies. Only one of them got food allergies. The other one has seasonal stuff like I do. If you have food allergies, your child has an even greater chance of having food allergies, not just any allergy. So it's definitely inherited.
Okay, and with the level of severity, I know that there are events that tout peanut-free sections, or they'll have a peanut-free night. What kind of, I guess, can it be to a level of severity where just being around where these foods are present can be enough to cause a reaction?
Yes. So that's why there is a lot of talk about peanuts on airlines, right? So
other than the fact that you can't even open the bags a lot of times.
True. So there's a couple of things going on when you talk about someone being around the food they're allergic to. Is it something that they're inhaling, or is it something that they're eating, or is it something that could touch them? Those are all different considerations. Now, again, I'm not a doctor, but my experience has been that if you have severe food allergies and you touch it, breathe it, or even, with breathing it, think of smelling it, or you get it on your fingers and it gets in your mouth or your nose or your eyes, those can all cause a reaction. Now, the touch reaction varies from person to person, and it may not turn into a severe life-threatening situation. However, that has happened to some people. What I get worried about, especially with children, is they put their hands in their mouth, they rub their eyes, they put their finger up their nose, and that your body
Not just
is
kids.
ingesting.
I know adults who do that too.
Okay. So that's where when we're out walking around in public, without making my daughter paranoid, I'm always trying to encourage her to use her arm to open a door instead of her hand. Or when we wash our hands in the bathroom, use the paper towel on the door. Things like that can help prevent her from picking up food allergens. Railings, think of a baseball game. Walking up and down the stands and grabbing onto a railing probably has food on it. When we're at the Mall of America to go to the rides, she's had reactions from touching the handles and the things on the rides and then touching her face and breaking out in hives. In airplanes or in restaurants where people are cooking things that you're allergic to, if the steam has food particles in it and you inhale it, you can have a reaction. So, for example, my daughter is allergic to eggs. After she had her first reaction, I thought it was still okay for me to cook eggs in my house, not knowing what could happen. So I ended up cooking eggs another day, and the steam had egg protein in it from scrambling it on the stove. And all she did was inhale that steam. She had another reaction. She didn't touch anything. So the food proteins can go in the steam. In an airplane, think of the bags of peanuts. They have a ton of dust in them.
Yeah.
And if just one person opened a bag of peanuts, it may not be a huge deal. But when you have, let's say, 100 people out of 300 on a plane that are all opening a bag at the same time, and the dust particles go into the air and then they're recycled through the plane. That can be very dangerous for someone. So we do have to be really careful about where we go, what we touch, what we put in our mouths to make sure that those people are safe.
So with what you had mentioned, is it just the Epi belt, the utility belt you called it?
Yeah. What? We call it Epi belt.
Epi belt, I like that. Is it possible that a child is unable to effectively use it because of a reaction? So does she carry signage? Does she have anything like a bracelet that would explain to people?
Yes. So I always recommend people have medications with them at all times and that they have some type of identification on them. So Avery wears a medic alert bracelet, and then her Epi belt, her doctor has said she can self-carry but not self-inject. So there's a difference between those two things, and there's little boxes they can check on the allergy action plan that every child should get from their allergist. So she carries it on her. That doesn't mean, oh, I'm having a reaction, I'm going to give myself a shot. It means my teacher or my mom who is with me can grab it right here and not have to walk 5 minutes to the office to get it. And so the mom or the other adult would be the one to administer. With the alert bracelet or jewelry, think of if, like, I was resistant to that idea at first, and I said to our doctor, like, why would I need to do that? I'm always going to be with her or a teacher, someone. And what he said was, what if you're in a car accident and you're knocked out cold and your baby is in the back crying, or toddler? What's the first thing people do to help kids calm down? They give them a cookie. Do you want them giving your child a cookie and you can't talk for them to advocate for them? And I was like, oh my gosh, no, that's the worst thing that could happen. So that kind of woke me up to think there may be times my child is lost or an adult can't speak for them, that type of alert jewelry would be a good idea.
I know there are ways to have schools get EpiPens. Do they just have to write to someone, or how does that work?
Yes. Okay. So this is really cool. The Mylan Pharmaceutical Company, they make the EpiPens. There are a couple of different manufacturers who make epinephrine. They are the makers of the original EpiPen that everyone talks about frequently. So parents and schools have the ability to get free EpiPens through Mylan this year, and they've actually renewed it a couple years in a row, so it may go into the future. I don't know. But if you go to EpiPen.com, you'll find information for parents and information for schools. The parents fill out a little form online and can print out an ID number that is generated at that time that allows them to bring it to the pharmacy, and it's $100 free copay card. So let me back up and say it may not be entirely free for you depending on your insurance plan, but if you have a copay up to $100, this will cover it. So EpiPens can be really expensive. I've heard upwards of $300 per set. So that $100 copay card can make a big difference. Schools can get them entirely free if they meet certain criteria and certain state laws. So all that information is on their website as well, and I would encourage everyone to go look at that.
Are people in the clear if they have not developed a food allergy at birth or in their youth? Does that mean that they will be free of them as adults, or can you acquire it later on?
You can definitely acquire it later on. And if you have food allergies in your family, that means you should definitely pay attention as you get older. Shellfish allergies are the ones that are most commonly onset as an adult. A local case that a lot of us paid attention to is Adrian Peterson. A few years ago, out of nowhere, he was eating a seafood dish and broke out into anaphylaxis. And his trainer came and gave him the EpiPen, and he realized he had food allergies. So that has also happened to some people that I know, just out of nowhere as an adult.
This is kind of a random question, but I guess not since we're on the topic. But if someone came to you and said, look, everything gets to be the way you want it, what would you want for years down the road, whether it be a year, 5 years, 10 years, when it comes to food allergies? I guess the easy question would be they're all cured. But as far as a public understanding, life being made easier for your daughter, what would it be?
Well, I always am of the belief that I can't count on the world to make life easier for her. So I'll tell you my current thinking on this is that it's up to the people with the food allergies to be as educated and empowering of themselves as possible and advocating for themselves, but knowing at the end of the day they have to take care of themselves, and sometimes it sucks and sometimes we don't get to have the same cookies as everybody else, but you can have cookies that are safe for you when you get home. In terms of the whole world and what I would love to see, I think a cure for food allergies would be the best possible option. And there is a lot of research happening right now at the federal and international level to try and figure out what could reverse a food allergy. I've seen they're doing it in mice. There's some really cool tests they're doing with probiotics and how that can potentially reverse a peanut allergy in mice. There is a lot of desensitization type trials that are happening right now, some oral where you like feed the person certain amounts of the food. There was a peanut patch, kind of like a nicotine patch, that was recently approved by the FDA for testing purposes for a trial. So there's lots of different things going on right now, which is really exciting. A lot of donors are giving money, high profile people are giving money to kind of spur food allergy research. So I would hope that in 5 years, max 10, that we wouldn't even need to carry around medication anymore and that everyone could just like be cured.
What food would you be miserable about? What food would make you miserable if you were allergic to it?
Me personally,
Yes,
what
you
would I be
personally.
sad about
Yeah.
if I was allergic to
Yeah.
it? So one thing is when my daughter was first diagnosed, I was still breastfeeding and I had to have the same diet as her and not eat the things she was allergic to. And that was really challenging. It was like an immediate shock of like, wow, all of these foods that she can't eat. I really love walnuts in particular out of all the nuts. And so like I make brownies now at our house and I can't put walnuts in it. And that makes me a little bit sad, but
That's
you know,
that's
it's not
a
the end
change.
of the
That's
day.
a change.
I really like shellfish, so I eat it when I'm away from my daughter, right? She can't have it though. So like I'm lucky I can still have some of those things, but on a daily basis, my household is free of all of those things. So all of our meals together, lunches I pack for the kids are all going to be free of those things.
This sounds, not just because you are such an advocate for it, but it sounds like once you've incorporated it into your everyday life, it doesn't become the obstacle or the hurdle that some people may feel. What can you say to parents who are immediately overwhelmed that this is so much to handle?
Right.
I don't think we're going to get through this. What's your advice to them?
Yeah, it definitely gets easier. And what seems overwhelming, definitely with education and support, becomes much easier over time. It seems that there's different developmental stages for food allergies to go along with the kids, you know, what stages they have. And so entering those different life phases can feel scary. Going to preschool for the first time. For my daughter, going to Bible school during the summer where I drop her off with a bunch of strangers was really scary to me. But being able to learn how to have those conversations about like, what does snack time look like at this birthday party? Or, you know, are you going to be having cupcakes? Or what does, you know, being able to ask those questions and get used to it. And you go through it enough times that you just kind of get over it. Sometimes people have a really hard time with family traditions like Easter or Halloween, and how do you manage those? And again, the first couple times are challenging, but it definitely gets easier.
And how has the extended family been? Are you able to give them literature or at least point them in the direction of take a look at these resources? These will help you understand and help you anytime she's in their care, help them do it?
Yeah. I've heard of other people in Minnesota who see videos that like our group, the food allergy group, creates, or the national group FAIR, food allergy research and education group, and they might share those with their family. Or right now, this is Food Allergy Awareness Week, and so there's a lot of facts and figures and people sharing on their Facebook pages, and so all of that type of resource and research and education helps. I think that family dynamics can be tricky. And that if you have grandma who's used to making a certain coffee cake with a certain type of ingredient for 50 years and you're asking her to change that coffee cake, you might be asking for trouble. Some grandmas might be more than willing to completely overhaul the recipe, where others feel like you're offending them. So every situation is different. I think that There are naturally people who are more open and willing to make accommodations, and others who are more like, this isn't my problem, figure it out yourself. And so it's up to the parents of young children to figure out like which battles are worth fighting. Maybe I want to host Easter this year and everyone can come to my house, and every food that comes into my house is going to be safe for my child. So there's different ways to work around it.
This may seem like a silly question in the sense of, I can't believe there are people who would do this, but has this impacted Avery's relationships with friends or inhibited her from making certain friends? Or have there been parents who've said, I just don't want the risk. I just don't want to deal with it. So we can't have her stay over.
I would say that to this point, there haven't been any obvious friend situations like that. We host a lot of play dates and sleepovers at my house because I can control the environment. And so I feel very comfortable with that. And we extend that offer all the time. The one situation I can think of is when I was looking for a nanny. So someone who would come to my house and take care of my kids, as opposed to a daycare center where I would bring them. I had some nannies, as I was going through the interview process, say they were uncomfortable with the risk and that they felt too nervous to take care of a child with food allergies. And so that was one example of like, my daughter didn't know that was the reason, but I felt kind of rejected. Like, what do you mean? I can teach you how to do this. It's fine. But they just felt like it was too scary for them.
I suppose it'd be, if you don't want to take that on, it would be, like I said, it would seem overwhelming to some people that there's too much of a risk involved. What do you say to those parents or those people that, what kind of steps can they take into making sure that if they are having, now a parent like you, I'm sure, does make that check with the family. So what should the parent in your position do when maybe a new friend is being introduced, where it's a birthday party or it's a sleepover or a weekend away or something? And then what would you say to those other families, that steps they can do into preparing?
So I would emphasize the physical safety and then the emotional inclusion. Those are two important things. So physical safety, obviously we want to keep the child safe. That means that you only give the child foods that have been pre-approved by mom and dad, or I give you a list of foods that you're going to shop from. We need to wash our hands before we make the food. We need to wash our hands after we're done eating, those types of safety precautions, how to spot a sign, a symptom of a food allergy reaction, and how to treat it. So we would go through all of that stuff. Usually I have a pretty easy list of snacks that I can either pick up and send along, or I can tell them what they are, that they would be able to easily find at Cub or any grocery store. The emotional piece is a little bit trickier, and it's especially for people who aren't used to dealing with it very often. And that is, don't make my kid feel like an outcast because she's different. So if these 3 children are all having regular birthday cake and she has a special cupcake, let's try and minimize how much of an issue we make out of that. So maybe you give the other kids their cake and give Avery her cupcake on the side, and you don't even address it verbally, but she knows she has a special cupcake coming. Or in a classroom setting, if for some reason, everybody else is getting one thing and she gets something different, don't say, you can't have that, you have food allergies, which would make a child feel awful. Instead, you could say with a smile on your face, oh, honey, I have something special for you. Come here. Right? So then she feels like she's getting something special and feels like she's getting treated even better rather than feeling left out.
That's a good way to turn it around.
Yeah.
Before we go for the day, what are some things that you would want parents to know, or anybody to know? Anything that you think we need to touch on that's important that we haven't?
I would encourage everyone to take food allergies seriously. Sometimes I know that there's some eye rolls or joking that happens when you hear about kids that have food allergies because, like I hear really insensitive jokes about like natural selection and like, they're the dorky kid with the peanut allergy. And what I try to do is think of it like any other illness or disability that a child might have. So you wouldn't make fun of someone who has, some kind of like debilitating disease, just the same way you wouldn't make fun of someone with food allergies. So that understanding and awareness and empathy goes a long way. If you do know of a kid in your child's class or in your family that has food allergies, reach out and ask the parent, like, what can I do for this special date? Or what can I do to help make sure that so-and-so feels a part of things? And that parent will be so grateful that you took the time to ask. Birthday parties are a big thing where sometimes people are nervous and is it okay to leave that child here without the parent? So as much as you can reach out and ask questions, the better. And don't ever not take it seriously and give that child something they're allergic to. Some people minimize it and say, like, well, let's see if they're really allergic to it. Or I bet that mom is just exaggerating. Let's give this child a Snickers and see what happens. Or a cookie. Don't do that.
Not a good test.
Let's not ever do that.
Not a good experiment. Where can people find you on social media? We gave them the blog, but give them that again.
Sure. So a few resources. My blog, marketingmama.com. On that website, you'll see some tabs across the top of different topics that I talk about, and one of them says food allergies. So if you click on that tab, you'll see all of the different posts I've written. Some are educational, some are reflections, more like essays, some are recipes and food recommendations. I have a Facebook page of the same name, Marketing Mama, and my Twitter account. And then the Food Allergy Support Group of Minnesota is an excellent resource for anyone new or just ongoing in this world of food allergies. So look up foodallergymn.org is the website, and then you'll also find a Facebook and a Twitter page for them as well. And then the last group I'll mention is FAIR, Food Allergy Research and Education, the National Food Allergy Group, and their website is foodallergy.org, and they're a phenomenal resource with a ton of information.
I think one of the biggest takeaways here is that, no, you are not alone. That's one key thing to remember when dealing with a diagnosis. And there are people out there. Missy's one of many, and there is sure to be more as people continue to have children, and hopefully you're able to find these resources and use them as they're intended for. Thank you, Missy, for being on the show. This was great. Hi and bye to everybody on Periscope. Hope you're satisfied with the view. The hair's it's okay, I guess. It's all right, but thank you very much. And you can find us on the web, childrensmn.org, at childrensmn on Twitter. And you can find us just about everywhere podcasts are available. You can go to iTunes, rate, review, and subscribe. That helps us with their algorithm. And then we're also on Podbean and Stitcher. And enjoy the week, everybody.
Thank you.
And then, as you just said, we're recording again. Let everybody know about finding an allergist.
Oh, sure. So in a food allergy journey, sometimes people first end up in the ER, or they might end up in their primary care office. Both of those are a good place to start, but we always recommend that you get a board-certified allergist to help you with your long-term food allergy planning. So they can really help you with diagnosis, testing, building an allergy action plan, and what it would look like in school and, in your life. So to find an allergist, you should be able to work with your insurance provider or do some fancy Google work to look for, specifically if it's with a child, a board-certified pediatric allergist is going to be your best bet.
Don't say we never give you anything. That was bonus right there.